Hello everyone, and welcome to my weather news channel. This is a natural phenomenon that occurs due to a rise in the water level in water bodies, and leads to flooding of territories. This usually happens either in rainy seasons or in spring, due to melting snow. But there are other causes of flooding. In Italy, showers were accompanied by hail and gusty winds. In some areas, the water level exceeded 1 meter. The first floors of buildings, underground premises and cars left on the roads were flooded. Prolonged rains. They arise mainly in summer and autumn, in regions with a humid climate. They lead to flooding of territories caused by rivers overflowing the banks, mainly. This happens for the reason that rivers collect water in vast areas. Precipitation has a strong effect on the water level in them. Most of the flooding that occurs is relatively weak. They cause not very much material damage, depending on the strength of the phenomenon and the characteristics of the area. Also, occasionally they can lead to the evacuation of people, although usually they do not flood houses, except that they are in depressions. In general, such floods are not particularly dangerous. There are many causes of floods. The most common is prolonged rainfall, which leads to overflowing of rivers and their spill across coastal plains. By the way, territories located in the lowlands are characterized by periodically repeated floods associated with the melting of snow. Often in the spring during ice drift, large blocks of snow and ice cause congestion of the river channel. As a result, water rises above the main level of the banks. On the islands, the mainland coast of the seas and oceans, the so-called wind surge occurs from time to time, when, under the influence of strong winds, the water surface rises above sea level and floods large areas of land. But the tsunami waves are more serious. They occur in tremors and eruptions of underwater volcanoes, and then hit the coast. Other causes of flooding include damage to reservoirs or dams, landslides that block river channels, and storm tides. For example, standing waves in closed reservoirs, lakes, ponds. Neither man can prevent nor stop floods yet. They can be weakened and localized. And so continuous monitoring and a timely and accurate flood forecast is the only way to isbas adverse effects. Monitoring is an organizational and technical государственная, or departmental, system of observations, assessment of the state of the hydrologic environment, analysis of processes occurring in it for timely vyavlenia and forecasting of their changes and assessment. Prediction of hydrological phenomena consists in operataliniae the probability of their occurrence and development in a certain place and at a certain time, as well as assessing the possible consequences of their manifestations. Experience has shown that in the area of effective preparedness and осуществления preventive measures, a well-functioning early предупреждение system is one of the most effective means of reducing damage. Flooding can be foreseen almost always, but with different заблаговременностью. Depending on many factors, flood предупреждения can range from many days and even weeks to several hours in advance. For the basin of each river and its individual sections, the решение of this task is individual in nature. Floods can in some cases be expected from a set of hydrometeorologic characteristics used in the precalculation program. They can be predicted by various methods, which are based on accounting for the previous watershed response to precipitation. In any case, the completeness and accuracy of information on precipitation, lack of soil moisture, water levels in rivers and other hydrometeorologic characteristics, such as the general synoptic situation, wind, atmospheric pressure, etc., play a decisive role. Flood forecasts are being developed by regional hydrometeocentrami. The advance of short-term forecasts of floods ranges from 1 to 3 days, and long-term forecasts of floods, 1 to 2.5 months. What most people think of when they hear the word flood. Filled to capacity because of heavy rain or melting snow, the water within a river overflows its banks and spreads across the land around it. Sometimes the area covered is wide and flat, water tends to spread out and be slow-moving, and may not appear to travel at all. Common in the Midwest, this kind of flooding can take days to dissipate. In mountainous areas, where water flows together through steep valleys, the flood water tends to move faster and linger for a shorter duration. Flash floods. Water from floods can take time to build up, allowing the population in an area time to be warned in advance. But sometimes flooding occurs quickly. Flash floods gather steam within 6 hours of the events that spawned them. They are characterized by a rapid rise of fast-moving water. Fast-moving water is extremely dangerous. Water moving at 10 miles an hour can exert the same pressures as wind gusts of 270 miles per hour, 434 kilometers per hour. Water moving at 9 feet per second, 2.7 meters per second, a common speed for flash floods, can move rocks weighing almost 100 pounds. Flash floods carry debris that elevate their potential to damage structures and injure people. In cold temperatures, bodies of water are often frozen. Heavy precipitation can cause chunks of ice to push together and create a dam in what is known as ice jam flooding. Behind the dam, water begins to pile up, spilling over to the plains nearby. Eventually, the wall of ice breaks, and fast-moving water rushes downstream much like a conventional flash flood, destroying objects in its path. The water carries huge chunks of ice, which can increase damage to surrounding structures. Coastal flooding. This type of flooding occurs along the edges of oceans, and is driven predominantly by storm surges and wave damage. This kind of flooding is usually connected to hurricanes, tsunamis or tropical storms. When low pressures occur in a storm over the ocean, they suck the water toward the center. As long as the eye is over deep water, problems are minimized, but as the storm moves toward land it carries a dome of water that can exceed 25 feet, 7.6 meters, in diameter. When the dome reaches the shoreline, it can cause significant damage. At the same time, waves breaking along the shoreline assault beaches and structures, with destructive potential. In a hurricane, 9 out of 10 deaths are caused not by wind but by fast-moving storm surge. In case of emergency, fast and slow-moving water can create significant problems for people who underestimate their power. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, attempting to drive through flood water is the leading cause of flood-related injury and death. 6 inches of moving water can cause you to lose your balance and fall. The best plan is to avoid flood water when at all possible and to make for higher ground. There are a number of things you can do to prepare for a flood and minimize damage. Structures should not be built in a floodplain. Keep your furnace, water heater, and electric panel elevated, especially if you live in an area where flooding is likely. Put together an emergency kit and make plans with your family, something that is ideal for any emergency situation, not just flooding. If you find yourself under a flood warning, make sure to pay attention to radio or television warnings. If you have time prior to an evacuation, turn off utilities at the main switches and disconnect electrical appliances. Move furniture and important items to higher levels in your house and bring in any outdoor furniture. Avoid contact with flood water. It may contain oil, gasoline, raw sewage, or any number of undesirable materials. Wash your hands thoroughly with clean water before eating, and do not drink from contaminated sources. Damage from a flood depends on a number of things, including how long the water remains before receding and how quickly it was moving. Pay attention to roadways, which could have been weakened or washed out, and may be unsafe. Be careful entering buildings. Fast-moving water could have weakened structural supports. If your home was submerged for an extended period, watch for signs of mold, which can cause illnesses. Floods and climate. As the globe warms, flooding could become a more widespread problem. Warm air holds more moisture than cool air, so the heaviest precipitation events could become heavier as air temperatures tick upward. In 2015, Climate Central analyzed rain gauge records since 1950 and found that 40 out of the 48 states in the continental United States have seen increased heavy downpours over that time period. The Northeast now sees 31% more heavy downpours than it did in 1950. The Midwest sees 16% more. Heavy downpours are defined as events where the precipitation dropped from the skies is more than the amount that accumulates from the top 1% of all rain and snow days over the study period. These bursts of precipitation, which usually fell as rain but sometimes as snow, the analysis found, are tough on infrastructure and can cause flooding. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, to stay up to date on the most important weather events.